accommodating us. And I'd like to throw it over to a good friend of mine, PJ. He's going to do a two-parter. This is something unique in Beach Blitz, where he's going to give a presentation about promoting positive mental health culture in our shops. And then we're going to have one of the coolest panels frankly, that I've seen in the FRC about how we can like incorporate this into our teams, into our lives. So I'm going to hand it off to PJ. I'm super excited for this. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, yes. Thank you for throwing it to me. Hopefully my screen is sharing. I don't use Zoom a lot. I am a therapist, not an engineer or computer person.
We can
So,
see your screen.
perfect. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about the elephant in the shop, which is promoting positive mental health culture in FRC. I'm going to be going through this fast. But hopefully we'll be posting these slides and everything. I know Beach Blitz is going to be doing that, so you'll be able to go through it in more detail later. For who am I? I'm an alumnus of FRC Team 910, the Foley Freeze out of Madison Heights, Michigan. I was a student from 7 to 10, mentored from 11 to 17. Current mentor of FRC 3538, the Row Jackets. I've been an FRC referee since 2011. I've been a host on Fun since 2018, and I am 99% of the way through my master's degree in clinical counseling, where I focus on youth and adolescent therapy. So first, I'm going to go through kind of the 5 most common mental health issues in teenagers and adolescents. So this is the age group that we'll all be working with, whether you're a student or a mentor. So what to look for and sort of just keep your eye out for. This is by no means a method. I'm not asking you to diagnose your students, but just something to be aware of and what these mental health, if a kid comes up to you and says, I have depression, like, what does that mean? So starting with autism spectrum disorder, abbreviated ASD. This is characterized by marked difficulties in behavior, social interaction, communications, a lot of sensory sensitivities. Commonly, you'll see what are called stimming behaviors, which are self-stimulating behaviors. This could be things like rocking, bouncing, flapping hands, or flicking, snapping fingers. A lot of walking on tiptoes is pretty common. They might pull hair, rub, scratch skin, repeat words or phrases, repetitive blinking. This is referred to as a spectrum disorder for a reason. There's no one definition of what autism looks like in people of any age. And like I said, this is by no means the exhaustive list of stimming behaviors or what it looks like to be autistic. At its most basic level, when you're looking at your students, these might be the kids who have difficulty communicating or difficulty fitting in with their peers. And so they may be off to the side. They may not be really comfortable in social situations. This occurs in approximately 1 in 59 children. It's more common in males and females, in males than females. And but the diagnosis rate is on the rise. So this 1 in 59, that number, that ratio has been shrinking in recent years. As we get better methods of testing, and now that we actually have names, and it's not just the weird kids, we actually are able to give them a diagnosis and get them the help they need to help fit in. So moving on, one a lot of us are familiar with, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. This is characterized by continuing inattention and or hyperactive impulsivity that interferes with daily functioning or development. There's also ADD, which is the attention deficit without the hyperactive behaviors. I lumped them together for our purposes. This occurs in approximately 9% of 13 to 18-year-olds. So, about 1 in 10. So most robotics teams, you're going to have at least one, if not more. General symptoms are going to include failing to pay attention or making careless mistakes, appearing not to listen, struggling to follow through on instructions, fidgeting, difficulty remaining seated, talking excessively, and blurting out answers. There's 3 typos in that sentence. Before questions have been finished, interrupting or intruding upon others. And now this is one that is more commonly diagnosed in males. So I think the 9%, I think it's, I have the numbers in front of me, but so it's more commonly in males, but that's because males and females generally present differently. The actual diagnosis rate is about equal across both genders, but it's harder to find in females. So they are less commonly diagnosed and treated for it. So a lot of the in general, males with ADHD, they are the outward ADHD symptoms. So they're the ones that are fidgety. They can't seem to sit still. They're blurting out answers. They're talking excessively. Whereas females, it's more common to have sort of more internal ADHD symptoms. So they might be more prone to just like sort of spacing out in class or in a discussion. They're more failing to pay attention, making the careless mistakes. It's more internal with females. So that's why it goes undiagnosed, even though the rates are truly about equal between the genders. Moving on, this is really broad term, depression. This is your depressed mood that affects thoughts, feelings, daily activities. This occurs in approximately 13% of 13 to 18-year-olds, and once again is on the rise in the general diagnosis world. And there's several different ones: major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, which could also be called dysthymia, seasonal affective disorder, which as we get into winter and as build season is during winter, generally that's one to always keep an eye out for, because and then postpartum depression can be seen, like teenage pregnancy happens. And so it's not going to be as common as the other depressive disorders in adolescence, but it is a possibility. So it's worth mentioning. These general symptoms include, sort of depressed mood, so a down, low mood most of the day, nearly every day, diminished interest or pleasure in activities. You might see significant weight loss or gain. They might not be sleeping enough or sleep too much. And then these last two, observable restlessness and diminished ability to think or concentrate. This can lead to some weird misdiagnoses with the ADHD. Because you see, untreated depression can present with this restlessness, this diminished ability to concentrate. And so you'll have people with untreated depression actually get diagnosed with ADD. And then that doesn't help because then they're taking the wrong medications or might be going to the wrong kind of therapy. And it goes the other way as well, where sometimes untreated ADD can lead to sort of the same symptoms as depression. And so that's always something that's interesting to me. I could talk for 2 hours about that, but we don't have the time. Moving on to probably the most common mental disorder in adolescence is anxiety disorders. This is characterized by those feelings of excessive uneasiness, worry, fear. This occurs in approximately 32%. So we're looking at about a third of the adolescent population has some sort of anxiety disorder. And once again, it's on the rise. As a diagnosis, I wouldn't say it's on the rise in occurrence. It's just mental health as it becomes more socially acceptable. It becomes better and easier, and these diagnoses go up. So sometimes it's a false rise in diagnoses just due to social acceptance. Some common examples are sort of generalized anxiety disorder. You might have students with PTSD from some traumatic event in their past. Obsessive compulsive disorder is considered an anxiety disorder, and then phobias. And a lot of these can tie together too. Post-traumatic stress disorder can lead to phobias based on what the trauma event was that caused the PTSD. Your general symptoms of anxiety, the sort of excessive worry occurring more days than not. Individuals, they'll find it difficult to control the worry. Like in a lot of ways, everybody's experienced anxiety in their life, right? Like some form of anxiety, especially this year, for example. But it's when that anxiety starts to control your life and affect your ability to focus and affect your ability to do what you need to do to live your life, that it becomes a mental health concern. So this can lead to sort of restlessness or feeling on edge. This can be due to a lack of sleep due to anxiety. So you can become easily tired, difficulty concentrating, irritability, and then sleep disturbance. And then the last one I just want to touch on, because it is important to keep an eye out for, are eating disorders. And so these are characterized by extreme and abnormal eating behaviors. This occurs in approximately 3% of teenagers. This one is significantly more common in females than males. It's about a double rate of occurrence, actually a little over double, I believe. And sort of your big examples include anorexia nervosa, bulimia, and binge eating disorder, all a little different. Anorexia, that's when someone is choosing not to eat. So this leads to a low body weight. There's this intense fear of gaining weight. This can be tied into anxiety disorders. Bulimia is recurrent episodes of binge eating followed by purging. And this will usually occur on average at least once a week for 3 months to meet diagnostic criteria. And then you've got binge eating disorder, which is sort of recurrent episodes of binge eating, but it's not associated with the purging like bulimia is. So this is one that's really important to watch out for in students, especially if you're meeting, you meet in the evening, let's say, and you meet over dinner time. Usually you have dinner with the team, and you're noticing a student never eats and they are losing a lot of weight, don't seem healthy. It's just something to keep an eye out for, even though, like I said, it's a relatively low occurrence rate, but definitely something important to watch out for. And so now that we've talked about sort of the common mental disorders, what are some ways you can build a positive mental health environment on a first team? And so I know I talk about teenagers a lot, just because that's my focus area as a therapist. And it's sort of what we're all geared into looking at is the FRC age. But this can go for FTC, FLL, any age. And this isn't just for students. All of this is also applicable to mentors as well, because mentors are just as susceptible to mental health disorders as students are. And so how to make your build space a safe space. I know safe space is, everybody hears that and they clam up because, all the snowflakes out there with their safe spaces. But I think it is really important to sort of build this concept of a safe space. And I never shy away from the term. And sort of, I boil it down into three words. And so I break them down here. The first thing you can do to build this safe environment is to listen. You want to let your students know they can come to you, or your peers, letting people know they can come to you if they're experiencing issues or feeling issues in any way. But the important thing with listening is you're not there to give advice necessarily. You're there to listen. You're not trying to solve their problems. You can't solve their problems sometimes, and you don't want to accidentally try to solve a problem and then end up causing more harm than good because you gave them what may not have been what worked for you may not work for them. So it's just being there and being sort of actively present when you're listening. Give them a chance to share, give them a chance to vent, give them a chance, whatever they need, in order to just feel safe and listened to. Secondly is respect. You don't want to judge students or your friends for coming to you for help. You want to avoid talking down, or in the case of an adult, trying to parent them. That's not necessarily why they're coming to you. Like, they don't want to be told what they're feeling is wrong or their feelings are invalid or like why they shouldn't be feeling the way they're feeling. That's not helpful to anyone. So that's this tone of respect that you take with them so that they realize that they've come to you because you said you would listen, or you've shown yourself as open to listening. But then all of a sudden, if you're not listening and you're trying to talk down to them, like, they're going to clam and shut right back down. And then finally is sort of confidentiality. Students or your friends should know that what they tell you will remain between the two of you for the most part. You want to be clear with them if they come to you and you have a legitimate concern that they have an immediate risk of harming themselves or harming others, that you're going to have to tell someone. Like, you're going to have to do something about it. You don't want to hold something in confidence because you're scared of hurting a student's feelings. If they're talking to you about a suicide concern, you don't want that on your conscience if you don't tell anyone about it and the student ends up going through and completing suicide. It's a rough spot to be in. It's hard. And you want to go to the proper people who can help, whether that's their parents, whether it's a school counselor, if you're working out of a school, or someone who has better tools or the means to help somebody in this dangerous position. And sort of along that, this is the uncomfortable part of the presentation for some, is It's hard in the world we live in. It's hard to say that you always want to be kind of on the lookout for signs of self-harm, but you do. It's something you always want to be looking out for. Statistically, females are more likely to self-harm than males, but it's a narrow percentage difference. So sort of your signs of self-harm, there might be unexplained cuts, bruises, or burns. Cigarette burns is the specific example used here, but it's burns usually will be on the wrists, arm, thighs. Keeping themselves fully covered at all times, even in hot weather. Like if it's 90 degrees outside and the kid is wearing a hoodie, sleeves are down, wearing jeans like the whole time, like that's a question you want to, it's just should raise a red flag in your head. Self-loathing, expressing a wish to punish themselves, changes in eating habits, because a lot of those eating disorders can be considered self-harm in a way. Signs of low self-esteem, such as blaming themselves for any problems or thinking they're not good enough. And then signs of depression. A lot of these also tie into signs of potential suicide risk, which if you've got students talking about dying or wanting to die, talking about feeling empty, hopeless, or having no way out of their problems, withdrawal from their family or friends, showing these drastic personality changes, which a lot of people think, oh yeah, if they suddenly start acting really depressed, that could be a warning sign. Yes, it can. But if it switches the opposite, sometimes switch from a seemingly depressed mood, like if somebody's sort of been depressed and down for a long time, and all of a sudden they're very happy or very content or very like seem like in a good mood, that can be a warning sign, because they may have decided they're going to end their life. So now they're not as depressed because they see the way out. They might be giving away their possessions. And then talking or writing about suicide, even jokingly, should always raise a red flag. So I've got a couple resources. There's a National Suicide Hotline. They also are adding, it's going to be a 3-digit. I think it's 988. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's not active yet, but it'll be like a 911 call, where it's just a simple 3-digit line. I think it's supposed to be active by July of next year. They're hoping to sort of have that up and running in the United States. There's also, you can direct your students to a place called the Trevor Project. This is specifically focused on LGBTQ youth, who generally have higher rates of things like depression, anxiety, depending on their external circumstances. And then there's the JED Foundation has some really good resources focused on reducing the stigma students feel about seeking treatment for, or even just talking about emotional problems. So if you're looking for tools, if you're like, I don't know how to make this a safe space, I don't know how to work on making things better, there's really good resources on that website. And then finally, my thanks and acknowledgements. Thanks to my mom for everything, to Justin for suggesting this as a topic for Beach Blitz, to Psych for pushing the topic and not letting me say no to presenting. And finally, my big thanks is to Dr. Woody Flowers for his support and passion for promoting positive mental health in all people. I had the absolute pleasure of talking it would have been, I believe, 2018 at a district event. I had a long talk with Woody Flowers about mental health, and just the passion. We exchanged book topics, we exchanged ideas, we exchanged authors we really liked on the topic, and just his passion for that subject matter really pushed me and then led me to presenting at conference at Champs and stuff like that. So just he's been a huge influence. So I just always wanted to throw out a thank you. And then I know I only had a short limited time, and I think I just snuck in under the wire.
Yep, and you have some questions as well that we can go ahead and ask you. The first one is, who is Justin, by the way?
Who is Justin?
Yes.
Justin Gervais. He's a mentor out on the East Coast. He mentors 5254. He was the one who suggested to Psych to reach out to me about doing this presentation for Beach Blitz.
Awesome. All right. Another Twitch user asks, should we approach someone if we see the signs of self-harm? If so, how?
Yeah, I would say yes, definitely approach them, but the how is very difficult and very hard. If it's a friend of yours and you have that trust already built up, I would definitely not be afraid of being open and honest. I think the only way we're going to change mental health and the stigma against it in our world today is if we are open and honest about it. It's why I try to talk openly about things like self-harm and suicide as often as possible, as uncomfortable as it gets for people and as comfortable as it is for me to speak about it. So I think just being open and honest, be like, not just like walk up to and be like, hey, I think you're cutting yourself, or, but why I'm asking, like, you've been acting different lately. Has anything been going on? Or, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? You've been seeming down. So just not accusing them. This goes back to sort of that listening and respect. You're not accusing them of doing anything. You don't want to come at them with these accusations, but giving them the chance to just sort of showing that you're there, which can then lead to them being more open, and then they might open up to you and tell you about it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Some more questions. What should we do to be proactive about students with mental health issues? Families/students might keep it private, or mentors don't know the extent of issues, so it ends up just reacting to issues.
Yeah. Proactivity, that's a good word, is proactivity. That's building this culture in your team sometimes of like being open and like just it's letting the students know that they have people to go to or that they can talk to you. It's not an overnight fix all the time. It is sometimes it's building over time. And you may like the question said, you don't know the extent, you don't know what their family situation's like, but it's just being open and being proactive and being on the lookout for any warning signs and just sort of making sure you're not doing anything that can that's could be triggering people without a use of doing that activity. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head.
All right. I think that might be all the questions we have. So if you want, you could take a 5-minute break and then come back when you're moderating the next one. But thank you so much, PJ. I actually learned quite a lot from that. So thank you again. We'll see you in like 5 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks.